Burlesque Stripped Down, episode number 29. Before I jump into our lovely intro music and this previously recorded episode that I was being all ahead of myself and recording before I even went on vacation, I just wanted to give a quick update on everything that happened in Orlando and where I'm at with it. If you were able to listen last Thursday, you know that I kind of gave a very stripped down and heartfelt version of what I'm going through as a resident of Orlando and member of the LGBT community, and everything that happened here has hit very, very close to home, figuratively, metaphorically, physically, all of that stuff. I just wanted to say that last night I was able to go to the vigil down in Orlando here at Lake Eola, and apparently it was the official vigil. There's been several other ones. This is the one that kind of the city of Orlando arranged and everything, and apparently there were over 50,000 of us there all around the lake with candles and just so much love, and I needed that. I mean, if you listened on Thursday, you know that I was having a rough time with that. So this was a really, really important experience for me, an important thing for me to be able to do, to connect with my community and to see all the love that was there. So it was really wonderful. I'm still reeling, of course. I watched yet another video today about the shootings, and it's still harder to deal with, but I'm getting there. And so I also kind of realized as I was listening back to the episode that I published on Thursday that I didn't quite verbalize the amount of love that I have for the victims, from the people who lost their lives to the people who were injured, to the people who weren't injured but still suffered through this, to the families, to our whole community. I was very focused on how I was feeling in that episode, I feel. And so I hope it's a given. I hope that it was clear that I feel for them and that I love them. But I just wanted to add that as well, that my heart is with everyone affected, and that I hope that the souls lost do rest in peace. If you haven't listened, feel free to head over to burlesquestrippeddown.com/Orlando. You can listen to what I have to say for what it's worth. And I would love to hear from you as well. So I know I'm not really kind of just like talking into the void. I would love to hear what you have to say, what your experience has been through all of this. So if you feel free, email me, velvet@burlesquestrippeddown.com. You can also leave a voicemail. You can leave a comment, anything like that. I would love to hear where you're at with all of this. So anyway, I just wanted to give a quick update on that so that you didn't think that I had just suddenly changed, everything had changed and was bounced back again. I did record this whole episode kind of before all of this happened, so I wanted to just give that quick note there. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the real meat of this episode. Welcome back once again, ladies and gentlemen. This is Velvet Eau Claire, as always, your guide through all of these secrets, saucy, sexy, and otherwise, of the ladies and gents behind the tassels. Thank you so much for joining today. Welcome to any new listeners. Welcome back to anybody who's been with us for a long time. I appreciate all of you. You're all 100% amazing in my book. I'm feeling a little silly today. I just got off of a great interview with another podcaster. I'll be sharing that with you very, very soon. So I am just feeling so happy and so blessed with everything that's going on today. And I am thrilled, as always, to be sharing this amazing interview with you. Today I have the one, the only, Miss Lola Frost, straight out of Vancouver, with us today. So she's going to be sharing some of her really amazing journey, and she has some awesome insights into what it means to be a performer and how she approaches her performance journey, and just some fantastic things to share, as always. I mean, all of my guests do. Who am I kidding? I just have the best guests in the world. So we're going to go ahead and get right into that momentarily. Before I do, though, I do hope that you can all do me a very quick favor and show your support for this podcast in one way or another. Either share one of these episodes with a friend of yours through Facebook. They're all over on my Facebook page, Burlesque Stripped Down. You can share them directly from the website as well, of course, on Twitter, Velvet Eau Claire, on Instagram, Velvet Eau Claire. You can find me all over the place on those things. I may start periscoping pretty soon. I think I've been teasing that for a little while, and I think it might actually happen one of these days. So you can just share me with friends. That's a huge help. also heading on over into iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever your favorite podcast player is, and leave just a very quick rating and review for me. That'll help me know, first of all, that you all are listening, what you all think of the podcast, and it'll help it kind of like show up higher in search results. So as people are looking for anything that's like burlesque related or performance related or anything like that, they when they do a quick search, they may not see me right away, but the more ratings and reviews that I can get, the higher up that we will appear on that, and that would be just amazing for me. So please, just if you have a second, just take 1 or 2 minutes and head over into your favorite podcast player, whatever it is, and leave a quick rating in addition to or in place of sharing with all of your good, lovely friends. Now, let me tell you a little bit about my guest today, the beautiful and the talented Miss Lola Frost. As Vancouver's rock and roll flapper, Lola Frost is best known for combining her anachronistic styles of vintage and modern, a true 1920s starlet with a kiss of Ramones grit. Her pieces are a sensorial experience to behold, an elegant blend of dance, theater, and fervent striptease. She's a performer, teacher, and mentor, and she's also the co-director of the Vancouver Burlesque Center and an integral member of Sweet Soul Burlesque. She is an international award-winning and headlining performer who has had appearances at the Burlesque Hall of Fame, the Salome Cabaret, and Teasorama, among others. She's headlined a whole bunch of different burlesque festivals, including the Colorado, Calgary, Windy City, and Stockholm, as well as the Southwest Burlesque Showcase. She's also a published and noted writer, and she's been featured on the 21st Century Burlesque magazine and Archer magazine sites, in print for The Burlesquer, Handcrafted Literary Journal, and Quill's Erotic Poetry magazine, along with keeping her own blog with a steadily growing following. She is proud to be a red burlesque lipstick signature shade girl and to have been voted into the top 50 industry figures of Burlesque by Burlesque magazine 3 years running. She's a true superstar and amazing in the burlesque world and in my book personally. She's an amazing woman. I would like to get right into my interview with the beautiful, the talented, the fabulous Miss Lola Frost. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. I have Miss Lola Frost here today. Welcome, Lola. How are you doing?
Hi there. I'm doing really great today. Thank you.
Good. Well, it's a pleasure to have you on. I'm looking forward to kind of chatting and getting to know you a little bit better.
Absolutely, Velvet. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
My pleasure. Let's go ahead and get started. I like to jump right into things. What do you have? You're up in Vancouver, correct?
Correct. Vancouver, Canada.
Yeah, a little colder up there than down here in Florida, eh?
Indeed.
What do you have going on right now up there in Vancouver or planning for elsewhere that you are the most excited about?
Well, actually, you caught me right in the final week before our 11th annual Vancouver International Burlesque Festival. So we've got a big one coming up next weekend, and that's takes place over 4 days. We have, of course, our industry night. We have a night of talks, and then we have 2 nights of showcases. And our headliners are Julie Atlas, Muse, and Matt Fraser, and and legend April March. So we're incredibly happy to have them in our city. We've taken our showcases away from 3 days to 2, which we think will really sort of make it a nice, compact, juicy package. And over the years, we've had really great response. And, as we all know in the world of burlesque, people are still discovering it. So we're still getting new audience members, and that's really fantastic.
Great. And are you just a producer there, or are you going to perform as well?
I am performing. I'm actually on the board of directors. So our festival runs as a not-for-profit society. So it's run by a board, and I am on the board this year. It's my first time serving on the board, and it's definitely a lot of work, but even my role has less work than some of the roles. So.
Yeah, it can be a lot to do, but that's great. And do you have anything are you mostly focused on that, or do you have anything that's following up right after this festival?
Yeah, right after. Actually, I'm featuring at the Show Me Burlesque and Vaudeville Festival in St. Louis. So I'll be coming down to your country. Really fun. I've heard so much about it. I'm so excited to work with Lola Vanella on her project, and just, over the years have heard so much incredible stories, not only about the show, but obviously about the parties.
Yeah, it's going to be a great, if I know Lola, and I've met her a couple times over in Paris, and if I know Lola Vanella, she's going to have some good times for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Well, cool. That's really exciting. I know there's a lot of festivals going on all over the place, and it just, the great thing about burlesque is that it's a year-round party, right? There's always something.
Yeah, very much.
Well, let's go backwards a little bit, and I'd love to hear. I mean, we heard a little bit, in the intro before this, before I started the interview, about your bio. Kind of the general what we know about you. But tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you get here? When did you really know that burlesque was what you wanted to do?
My journey, I feel, started like super young. I tell the story a lot that I told my mom when I was 8 I wanted to be a stripper. It's just sort of always been part of me that I wanted to dance and I wanted to be, naked or mostly naked. But I mean, obviously the journey through adolescence and into your younger adult years is always a bit of a journey, let's just call it that. And I did do a lot of go-go dancing at raves. I did a lot of sort of club dancing before I found burlesque, even though I feel like I was always searching for it. But I really knew it was for me when I saw my first show, and that was here in Vancouver. And everything just kind of gelled together because I didn't, back then we had the internet, but it wasn't like what it is now.
Exactly.
There was no YouTube. I barely even knew what MySpace was. And, in 2005 or 4, when I saw my first burlesque show, that wasn't really accessible to me quite yet. So the ideas I had in my mind about what it would be or could be were just from old movies and, books. And so when I saw it on stage, like, eyeballs popped out, my heart exploded. I was like, yes, this.
One of those cartoon moments.
So much so. And then I melted into the floor and I was like, okay, I guess this is what I'm doing. And so really the journey, of course, when you first start is a bit slower. And it was different when I first started because there was not really any schools. There was no training. I just sort of asked a producer after maybe seeing my third show, because I had seen them around, and I said, hey, I've always wanted to do this. And they're like, kind of like looking me up and down. Yeah, kid, I'm sure you got what it takes, So I made up a routine and I got up there and I just did it. And I guess I was good. I mean, they kept booking me. So yeah.
So you were kind of, in that sense, in the beginning, at least in those first phase, you were just kind of self-taught. You just saw stuff and figured out how to do it on your own.
Yeah, very much. And, I've always been a performer. I come from competitive figure skating. I come from theater. And like I say, lots and lots of go-go dancing, and sort of free-form dancing. So the stage was not a stranger, but definitely the context of adding the art of striptease. And that was definitely like a bit of a journey and sort of figuring out like, what is burlesque? Like, what's my version of burlesque? And over the years, sort of developing my own style. And really, I kind of sort of feel that in 2010, so I started in 2006, and by 2010 was really where I started to identify as being an artist, and as this being a very viable art form for me to not only channel my expression through, but also, thinking about it as more of a career, as just something that you do as a hobby because you love it and you love the community. You want to be more part of the industry. So that was a big shift for me at that time.
Was there anything kind of that was the catalyst for that shift, or was it just kind of at that time where you were in your performance journey?
Yeah, a bit of both. I was working, so I had a long history of working for visual merchandising and window display in the fashion industry. Yeah, and I had been dancing and working in that realm for quite a while. And in 2010, I was accepted to debut at the Burlesque Hall of Fame. And for me, sort of I was being challenged by the company I was working for too. They're like, oh yeah, we support you, but it's time that you make a commitment to us and sort of, not committing to your art because it's taking you away from your work, right? And I was like, okay, fair enough. And for me, it was at that teeter-totter where I either jump all the way in or I do get out. And so I thought, foolish of me, I thought I'd go to the Hall of Fame, I'd debut, and that would be a real nice closer for me,
Yeah, right.
Like a real good high note to leave. And hilarious. Like
that's not gonna happen.
It was completely the opposite. It was just like this coming home. I had never seen, because we had our festival here in Vancouver, but I had not been that close to that many international performers at one time gathered together for the same reason under the same roof. And it just, it really shook me in the best way possible. And I did not choose to stay at my corporate job.
Did you leave right after that then?
Very soon after that, within the next year, I had shifted out of the one store I was working at and went to a smaller store. My role was less important to their needs, and I could still perform. I said, my goals, because they're a very goal-oriented company, and I said, my goals, unfortunately, really are in the realm that I'm working. And so if you're a company of your word, you'll support me and you'll put me in a lesser role so I can pursue this. And
I like that. I like that approach. Put it on them to show that they're, that they are what they've said they are, right?
And they really did. They supported me for a whole other year. And in that time, I shifted more into full-time performing. I opened a studio with my business partner. So I was also teaching at another studio. So I left my job. I left the studio I was being paid at, and I became a full-time artist, and I became a co-business owner. So that was a big shift too.
Absolutely. That's a huge moment. And so right now you are full-time doing art and producing and teaching and all of that?
Correct. Yes.
Fabulous. Yeah. Fabulous.
Indeed. Fabulous. The most hard work you'll ever do, but also some of the most rewarding.
Well, just recently on an episode, one of the hot tips, we were talking about a passion. I was talking just by myself to the microphone about like a passion-driven career versus a purpose-driven career, and that was a really interesting, because I had heard another podcast interview about that on a totally separate podcast about entrepreneurship and everything, and it was really interesting to kind of think about the difference between just doing something because you're passionate. It's that internal motivation versus that purpose when it's kind of more external. It's about what are you contributing to everyone. And it does make it, I feel like it makes it easier to put in those long hours if you really have that purpose, if you can see that external reason for everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially in something like the arts or in teaching, there's a parallel between them. I don't think every industry has that per se, but definitely something like us, like, when we first develop things, say you're not a teacher, but you're a performer and you feel like you have a lot to give, that becomes your purpose. So your passion leads you to your purpose. Definitely. And then you can start contributing, to your students' lives or people that come into your life seeking this guidance that you have gotten through just your passion of being on stage, which I find a really nice balance.
Yeah, definitely. You're absolutely right. Especially in burlesque, like they're not mutually exclusive, even just performing, even if you don't want to teach, there's still a bit of purpose there because we have so much interaction with the audience, so much more than a lot of other art forms do,
Absolutely.
So tell us, you mentioned seeing those burlesque shows early on, and I'd love to hear, were there any specific performers, either back then or now, and then kind of branching out outside of performers too, who just kind of inspires you in your life or who has inspired you through the years?
Yeah, the early performers, I still know actually. And one of them was Bettina May, who now lives in New York, but she is from Victoria. And also Go-Go Amy was in some of those early shows. There was a couple performers that came up really early in my sort of formative years, like Roxy Delight, Little Brooklyn, and those were some sort of early innovators to me that I got to sort of see while I was developing, which made it really cool to sort of have an outside opinion as opposed to just our local performers. But our local performers are pretty awesome. And Melody Mangler was also one of the first sort of early women I saw perform who always slays my heart. Like, we're really good friends now, and I'm still mesmerized by her. The troupe that I perform with, Sweet Soul Burlesque, seeing those women really early before I had got my feet, on the ground in my style of performing were also very influential. And everyone else sort of leading forward, after we got connected through the internet, after I started traveling a little bit more, then I kind of, look to people that inspire me more, like Michelle Lamore is obviously a giant influence to me. I remember Kitten DeVille being highly influential as well. And these are just, small clips that you could find on their MySpace pages. And the cool thing about connecting very early, and even still, I find that burlesque is really unique for this. When you reach out to people, just be like, hey, like I saw this and you're really amazing. Like, thanks for your contribution. They write back. They're not inaccessible. They're just like us, just weirdo artists doing their thing. And that was really like helpful, made me feel very connected to something that was way bigger than I was. And, early influencers that maybe aren't connected to burlesque are, like things like the drag community. That was really big when I was raving. So just their extravagant makeup, their intensely crazy costumes, and just their attitude, they're like sort of whimsical but fierce, sort of attitudes. And yeah, I mean, I'm like one of those people that's always just like, that inspires me, that inspires me, that inspires me. And the 1920s are obviously, I actually discovered that aesthetic and that feeling when I went to fashion school. So even back in my visual merchandising days and my fashion styling days, I was really drawn to the 1920s just for their attitude and their discovery. So that sort of exuberant, youthful, like, let's go crazy and discover, and not just party, but just, everything was so new in that time. And I can really relate to that youthful sort of vibrant spirit. And I try to sort of combine some of that into my work.
I love that. I think that's really interesting that you found, especially, like not just a time period, but kind of that, I guess, worldview or culture, I guess. I'm not sure what the right word, but that approach to life, I guess, that really resonates with you. And so when you do your acts now, do a lot of them have, that kind of feel? Do you incorporate that in your performance?
Well, my performances, I mean, I have a couple pieces that are definitely more like how I would describe, like joyful and upbeat and sort of like exuberant, but they always have this undertone of smolder and control, because that's just sort of, it's who I am. And on stage, it's sort of this way that I love being able to channel on stage this like controlled, dark, smoldery sort of persona, whereas when I roll through life, I am more of that like joyful, funny, like weird, like bubbly, and so I really needed a place to channel that like intensity. And so the stage really gave me that. So as opposed to being like someone like a good friend Jin Minsky from New York, who's amazing, vivacious 1920s tap dancing acts really personify that spirit I was sort of speaking of. Mine is sort of on the low smolder. So although I take that approach to my life on stage, I sort of flip the coin and have this like kind of deep, controlled. And it took me a long time to get there. That was sort of my work as an artist, was to slow down and like channel and be okay with that.
I think that's really interesting how you've, kind of taken and defined your own version, still incorporating those elements. But, we've talked before, like with, when I talked with Ruby Jones and a few other people about kind of, personas and how they kind of bring out elements of ourselves, right? But only certain elements sometimes and sometimes others. And some people choose to have this kind of general persona, this element that's in each of their acts. And some people bring out different things in different acts. And so it's really interesting to hear this journey and how people, like for you, it was bringing out that smoldering that you don't necessarily have in your everyday life, but this stage gave you a place to express that.
Yeah, I know everyone's process is so fascinating to me, especially character-driven performers. I'm always mesmerized by how they can do that.
So your performances, you'd say, are less character driven, more because you have more of the dance background and things.
Mine are definitely a persona. So I sort of go between like defining someone as a character performer and someone as a persona performer. Myself, I'm just a persona. I'm like myself blown up, and like I say, trying to channel a part. Like I wouldn't walk down the street all like smoldery weirdo like I do on stage.
That'd be funny though. I'd like to see that.
Occasionally, if I'm like checking someone out,
there you go.
Whoa, tone it back. But
I'm not on stage right now.
Yeah, but I definitely think that when I'm on stage, there is that resonance of this persona that I'm definitely trying to project. And the way that I build my acts is definitely on movement and music and a feeling that I want, that I would like, that I invite the audience to sort of take away with them. And a lot of my acts, the very underlying, like really deep down artist statement style is like, a lot of it comes from personal experience. A lot of it comes from things that I've felt in my life that I sort of want to channel through this sort of striptease. And, you know, a lot of it to the onlooker you wouldn't really know necessarily that there was that sort of deep rooted sense of overcoming or sense of power or something like that. It's just what they're left with, hopefully, after a performance, is that they just feel like they feel what resonates after my work, essentially.
Well, and I think that harkens back a little bit. I mean, just hearing you talk about that sounds so, you know, I was talking about passion and purpose. Like that sounds so purpose driven, because it is that external, like you know, you're so focused on like what you want your audience to take away from it, which is great. Well, actually, that segues quite nicely into the next question that I wanted to talk about, which is your inspiration for your acts in general. So you said you start kind of with that music. Do you kind of have a method that you go through with this act creation, or is it just kind of come out very organically through rehearsals?
Yeah, it's super organic through rehearsals. Like the music is so important. I've actually had an act in the works for 2 years, which, you know, it's still like, it's just, I call it like birthing. It's like not even out yet. I have the concept. I have like what my costume should look like, but I don't have the music, and it's killing me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So what started this one? Was it just what was the seedling for the idea?
Well, actually, it was super deep and intense, but I did I did an ayahuasca ceremony, which is a Native American journey through medicine, which ayahuasca is like the grandmother to peyote, which is like grandfather. So it's spirit molecules. And you go on this really guided sort of, like, not psychedelic because it's not drug like that, but very much a visual journey led by shamans. And yeah, it's like it's not very light. I'm like, oh, that's
intense.
You know?
Yeah.
The grandmother, she's like a great serpent, right? So I was visited by her, and there's all these snakes, you know, in one of my visions. And at first I was a little afraid because I was like, well, it's a lot of snakes, like a lot of snakes. And then I remembered that I love snakes, so it was okay.
It's all right then.
Yeah, and they just sort of crawled all over me and consumed me. And then one big purple serpent like came up to me and just told me to open my mouth and poured a bunch of light and information in me and just sort of sat with me for a while. And that was like serpent gateway, creator, destroyer, goddess, sort of, for me, was like, now this needs to be an act. And I'm not sure, you know, at first it was an act that might have had to have been very intense and very like focused, similar to how I do all my styles. But as I sort of meditated with it and sort of looked through different music and different feelings, I know now that she's much more grindy and loose and like very passionate instead of still. Like she's not meant to be this intense focused character or persona like I always do. She's meant to like grind it out and get down. So that feels better. So that's the process that I haven't really gone through before. Whereas normally music just comes to me and it's like, this song needs to be, you know, an interpretation of what like I want to express. For me, it's like always in a sense of power and overcoming. So it's like a constant theme in how I create is sort of like the right to feel, you know, this powerful in yourself, this right to feel this sexual, this right to feel vulnerable in front of other people, and, you know, put that on stage with these lush costumes and, you know, intense looks, and just allow a dialogue between you and your audience through this really strong place. And then, you know, hopefully allow them to feel that as powerful in themselves as you do on stage.
So can I ask kind of, you said it was a new process for you as you're working with this kind of serpent idea. Can I ask what kind of things you're going through? I mean, has it been through kind of meditation, or do you actually like, you know, just, I mean, you don't have music yet, so there's not a lot of rehearsing you can do. Are you just kind of going in and trying to embody that and moving in the dance hall, or?
Yeah, like, I mean, like I say, I've had a few different musics that I've tried to work with, you know, and I'll listen to them, I'll feel them, I'll move to them, and she's like, nope.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, and I spend a lot of time, like you say, like, not necessarily meditating cross-legged, like, you know,
right.
Om Shanti styles, yeah, which is totally fine. But my meditation is through a lot of movement, or through a lot of contemplation, and and especially I've sort of hit a point in my burlesque career as well, where to create something big and lavish, like creating a piece, as opposed to just creating something, that maybe will go on some local stages and you're going to have fun with it and see where it goes. This one has felt so much more definitive. So it's like the process to like put forth birthing such a big new act is also kind of new. And you're sort of like, oh yeah, it definitely has to have certain elements to go on certain stages, but you still want it to hold this feeling of why you're creating it, So now that I feel like just, last week listening to one song over and over again that I want to be part of it, I sort of added another piece of music that I was like, oh, that makes sense. I'm pretty sure I can start putting those pieces together and getting in the studio and starting to move through what that will feel like, that, old grindhouse kind of more about being the serpent goddess as opposed to having her come to me, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's really interesting. Well, I'm looking forward to kind of following the journey. Maybe I'll get to see the act someday, as it develops and everything. I just find it fascinating to hear, like we were talking about, the process that performers go through, especially like you said, when it's something more, I mean, this is big, this is a piece. This could be, kind of one of your, I don't want to say signature in the sense of that's more external, but one of the ones that resonates with you, like your internal signature.
Yes, 100%.
Well, speaking, we were talking a little bit about who inspires you in life. Have you had any major just fangirl moments where you've met someone at maybe one of the shows that you've been to, or a festival or anything, and you just kind of, had a hard time, like not falling over, acting, throwing your panties on stage or whatever it may be?
Oh, yeah. I fangirl all the time, but I legit almost fell over when I did meet Michelle Lamore the first time. And that was at my first Beehoff in 2010. I was at the Plaza. So it was in Old Vegas that one year we had it there. And it was my first year, right? So everything's already so overwhelming and amazing. And so, I'd look around and I'd be like, oh my goodness, like all these faces that I've only seen in pictures or small video clips. And, you're kind of like panting to yourself, like, be cool, be cool, be cool. Because, for me, it's, I want to celebrate so much of like how their style gave me permission to find my own style. It's like, you taught me how not to hold back. Like, I don't know you, but you helped, And I rolled up to her and said, like, just like stupid things, like when you say, you're Michelle Lamore, like as if she doesn't know,
Did you know this? It's amazing.
She turns around, she's like, yes, I sure am, and she's like very adorable and very patient, like while I sort of blathered on about how her contribution to burlesque is so important and like, thank you for all of this, and blah, 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 just kind of like spewing at the mouth. And she just like touches my hand to like stop me. And she goes, I know who you are. And I was like, pardon? And she's like, well, yeah, I was on the adjudication team and I saw your video and I said yes. And I was like, oh, and I just like,
oh my goodness,
took a step to the side, like stumbled over my shoe, and I'm like, okay, thanks, bye now. And I just ran away into the first person I recognized and tried. I'm like, hold me up, my legs don't work anymore.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was really charming. Like, we're friends now. It's just been but even still, every time I see her, I'm like, hey, Michelle. She's like, hey, hello. She's like, don't be a nerd.
Do you know who you are?
She's like, don't be a nerd. I'm like, whatever. I will never stop being a nerd. So.
That's adorable. I love that.
Yeah.
So here on the podcast, we always like to talk a lot about kind of the reality of burlesque performance, right? Because it's not all glamour and rhinestones and glitter and sparkly amazingness.
No, that's like 5 minutes of it.
Exactly. There's a lot more to it. I always talk about like I always mention how rehearsing, like I find rehearsing to be the most exhausting thing. Even if I'm not dancing, like dancing is one thing I expect to be exhausting, but like even just a regular, if I'm not too much movement type of a number, it's so tiring because you take off all your clothes, you got to put them all back on. You take them off, you gotta put them all back on, right? and then sometimes it even goes deeper than that, because this is burlesque is such, this, I'm preaching to the choir here, but because it's such an internal thing, we go through so much stuff. And you've been around for 10 years now in the industry, you've gone through this kind of internal journey. Maybe you're still going through it. Has there been any real low moments for you where you just kind of, I don't know, something that you would consider maybe your worst moment in burlesque?
Yeah, sure. Do you mean the times when I'm starving, or do you mean the times when, you have friends or former performers who you were close with that like just leave you. For sure. There's definitely like, I mean, it's life, right? And any industry, any business, any art form, you're going to have your ups and downs for sure. And definitely living as a full-time artist, you don't have a consistent viable income, and it's super hard on you. I mean, the rehearsals and the costuming that I hate to do, those are like those are like the first world problems. It's living as an artist where you want to create and you have all of this passion, and sometimes that is not conducive to paying your bills, right? And so when you still have to have an output of such high level creativity and high level passion for what you're doing and belief in what you're doing, but you have like brown rice and broccoli to eat, it's very frustrating, right? It's sort of, it takes you into these ups and downs of, why am I doing this? Is this right? Should I get a real job, quote unquote? So definitely there's been some highs and lows in that, especially in the beginning of being full-time. So now that it's been a couple of years, I definitely have a much more established sort of form of income. I teach a lot more. I do art modeling. Like I do supplementary things for my income that doesn't just necessarily have me just be on stage, which is very helpful. And so that, I mean, everyone that's as an artist can relate to those things. And I guess just the only other hard part is that sometimes, community can be a myth with the fact that everybody is supposed to get along and everything's super shiny. And of course, as humans, we're not all supposed to get along. It's just not the way it's going to be, And I've definitely had, throughout my career, I've had two major sort of blips with people who something turns and they, suddenly you do not get along anymore and their vision is different than your vision. And instead of, being adults about it and coming to an amicable sort of like, well, okay, it's like a relationship. Like we don't get along anymore. I'm going to go over here and do my art and you go over here and do your art. But instead, sometimes people have to make it a bigger deal. Of course, there's subtext here. I don't need to name names, but I think this happens in many communities where because you're doing a different style that someone doesn't agree with, that they have to make it about them. It's like, I'll do me, you do you, boo. It doesn't have to be super negative, but sometimes people are sensitive and egos are crazy. So, that's been hard to deal with a couple of times because when you feel close to someone, like if they're a friend or a business partner or, a fellow producer, and suddenly there's bad blood, instead of just taking it out between the two of you, sometimes it trickles out and mean things are said, and that can be harmful. So just, separating and moving forward. It's my jam. Goodbye, haters,
Indeed. So what kind of gets you through those low points, whether it is those interactions or, the starvingness?
Yeah.
What is it that gets you through?
Yeah. Well, like my network of really awesome friends, my mom and my sister's a fellow performer as well, Villainy Loveless. Yeah. So we can really get down on the struggle, and my business partner, cherry on top, like you just to have people you can reach out to, and doesn't mean you have to solve each other's problems. Sometimes you just need to talk about it with someone else that knows, and also I find it really helpful to close the internet and, walk outside.
Fresh air. Imagine that.
Yeah. I mean, I live in Vancouver, such a beautiful city. There's lots of nature. And I find just just unplugging and getting away from your head and getting back in your body is really great for just remembering that like everything's happening how it's supposed to be. These bad moments are super temporary, and instead of letting them eat you up, you just got to get back to being rad. And sometimes that takes a couple days, but there are lots of methods, to doing that. Go like turn down the lights and like dance around your underwear for a little bit.
Dancing always helps. And it's funny how the things that help us the most, I think, are the things that we least want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be like, I mean, I would never, if I was down, I would never be like, okay, it's time to create a new act. Like how frustrating is that, Free form, sometimes, I mean, I used to, not as much anymore. Now I have, like I say, those kind of different methods. But one of my favorite things used to be, just going out by myself into a big old dance floor where I didn't know anyone and just like going off, like that felt really nice. No rhyme, no reason, no like have to choreograph, no nothing, and just sort of just be with the music, and my body. And that always sort of set me free.
So those are the kind of the low moments, you know, how you get through those. What about, let's flip the on its coin, talk a little bit happier, right? About those high moments. Has there been, like, take us on a journey. Take us to one specific moment where you just knew that you were in the right space. You knew that, I mean, just the stars aligned and you just felt so good, particularly about your decision to be this type of performer and to do these type of things.
Yeah, I mean, successes come in such I find such tiny little packages, like these beautiful little moments in my burlesque career, you know, just it can be like really simple, like getting a letter from someone who's telling me that my style has really like affected them, you know, and like whether it gave them permission to be more themselves, you know, kind of like how I get inspired by people that I adore, where it's really helped them push through some boundaries, or it's gave them, you know, some sort of power inside of themselves to go forward. You know, my students growing all on their own just by having some classes, like things like that for me are the most valuable. It like really helps me be like, yeah, you're on the right path. Like keep doing this, you know? And like really sensational ones are, you know, having really brilliant standing ovations for something you created. Like that's really special, you know, because you're there for your audience. Like, you know, that's why we're here. Without them, we're just dancing around like weirdos. So,
nothing wrong with that either.
Nothing wrong with that. But, you know, in 2013, so the act that I did at BHOF that year is my first year competing for Queen, and I did an act sort of similar, so what I've sort of talked about inside of my themes of overcoming, of reclaiming power, and this particular act, I call it Frostbite, was really important to me. I had performed it for over a year before I applied with it, and it had been on many stages, big and small. And just being accepted to do this kind of act, which is incredibly neo on the Queen stage, was really, I felt really honored by that. I was like, this is really cool. I felt really proud to be accepted to bring something like that to the stage. I did win second runner-up that year, and super nerded out, super weird face, and just like, you know, jumping up and down. Like, I like to thank my mom, you know, but it, again, just because, like, I mean, it's a really proud moment, and it's weird to think of an award. You have to be given an award to feel that way. And I don't want to associate that, because I don't think that's the end all be all of what makes your career and what makes success. But I do feel that because this particular piece of work was so important to me, that being acknowledged for it from my peers and my legends and my audience was really powerful. And it, again, it gets sort of is like, yeah, this is your style and it's okay. And your audience resonates with it. Congratulations. You know, and that felt good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really interesting that maybe it would have had a slightly different, I mean, it certainly still would have been an amazing experience to get an award, but if it had been a different number that you didn't resonate with so much, maybe it would have felt a little differently. It might not have impacted you quite so much.
Yeah, I definitely think so.
Possible.
And like just, you know, I wrote about it for 21st Century, just my experience at BHOF that year, and just the feeling I didn't care, like if I had won, like the competing thing is like, whatever, all these bitches are rad. Like, you know what I mean? Like, how do you even like judge yourself compared to anyone else, especially at that beautiful caliber? Right. But just when I got off stage, it felt for me as a performance, because I had done it so many times, like it felt so perfect, you know? So I didn't care what the outcome was. It felt real good. And I remember I came off stage and I was just like how, as you do, you're just buzzing, and Frankie Vivid was standing there, and he's like, great job. I'm like, can I hug you right now, please? And he was like, he's like, yeah, for sure. And I just kind of like held on to him for a hot second. I'm like, thanks. And I just walked away, and I was like,
that feeling, yeah.
I needed that. Big moments and tiny moments, like they're all the same. They all mean some sort of success, and they all mean like a little bit of pride, and they all mean like keep going, you know.
Definitely. So what is your biggest challenge right now as a performer? But it could be on stage or off stage. What is your biggest thing that you're struggling with at the moment?
Balance, I'd say. Transition. When you work, so like when you depend on what you do so much for income, and you want to add something to your life, it's challenging to find the time to take on something else while still maintaining the caliber of what you're doing. So for me right now, it's so important for me in this stage of my life to take more training. I want to teach more, you know, I want to focus on that. And right now it's great. I've developed, similar to how you develop depth and breadth of work that you've done. So you have like some really solid acts that you can take anywhere and be hired for. The same way you want to add to that repertoire, I want to add to my teaching repertoire. So I have some classes I love teaching, and they've taken me this far, but I really want to go forward with being able to integrate more of what I do or what I've experienced on stage and add that to what I teach people. And I know for me that means I'm going to have to take some other trainings that aren't burlesque related, but will still combine the sort of the construct of what burlesque is with these new sort of things, and then be able to field them into teaching. So it's challenging for me to think about stepping back almost from performing, not completely, but definitely like stepping back from doing so much to focus on something else that will eventually allow them to merge once again. But yeah, so that balance is real challenging. Egos are weird.
It's true. It's true. Even if it's something that you know that will kind of make things better in the end, you know it's right for you, you know it's the path that you should be on or that you need to be on, it still can be hard with that ego.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fit.
So yeah, I mean, it's good. I mean, I love a good challenge. And I love just acknowledging just sort of those times in your life where you feel so intensely a shift that you have to follow it. It's not like a whim. You're like, oh, maybe I'll try this. You know, it's like, no, it could not be more clear.
So when you are performing, what is one thing that you always have in your burlesque backstage kit?
Oh, something boring like safety pins?
That's not boring. Super important. Super important.
Super important.
Always safety pins.
I mean, that kind of stuff, I mean, your basics or whatever, but I always, you know, I think it stemmed from when I used to be a raver, that I always like to have a little kit just in case anyone needs anything. Like, it's less about me and more about what might come in handy for someone else, you know, especially doing, like, when you do so many shows, you know, the common things that, like, why does everybody always need that? Why don't you have that, girl? You know? Yeah. So yeah, I always like just keep a couple things that just like, I always bring a sewing kit. Like, of course, like, you know, you might need it, but it's usually, you know, some persons that are backstage being like, I don't have any pasty tape. You're like, of course you don't. Like, why would you? It's a show.
Right. Yeah, I know. Pasty tape. Who needs that? Nobody needs that.
Yeah. You know, and I'm a bit of a weirdo, like West Coast woo-woo. Like, I've always got some sort of charm with me, you know, like amulet or crystal that, like, I don't have to necessarily, like, fondle and whatnot, but I usually have some sort of token with me that I keep in my bag or in my makeup bag or just around my general person that just has some like sweet vibes, you know?
Yeah,
just makes things feel nice.
Definitely. Well, all right. Well, this next little section is called Pick Your Poison.
Okay.
And I have 9 different questions, but I'm only going to have you answer one of them. We've been talking a lot about, you know, about burlesque and about performing and about these deep journeys. These are a little less deep, these questions.
Awesome.
These are just to kind of get to know Lola Frost as a human being.
Okay.
All right.
Sure.
So I'll have you pick any number 1 through 9.
3.
Who is your favorite Disney character?
Oh,
and why?
Wow.
Say why as well.
Oh, man. Oh, no, there's so many cute ones.
I know. It's so hard.
It is so hard. And I don't really, I mean, my mom, my sister, and I definitely grew up watching Disney movies. We love them so much, especially in the era of like The Little Mermaid and The Lion King and Aladdin, you know.
The real ones. You know, those are the classics.
I know.
Good classics.
Yeah, and like previous that, like Robin Hood, like I'd have to say, like maybe not a Disney character, but can I just pick a favorite movie?
I'll allow it.
Okay, definitely Robin Hood with the foxes. I used to want to marry that fox.
It is funny how he was like a fox, but yet so charming at the same time.
Oh, man, if anyone ever gave me a flower ring with a little light bug on it, I would die.
So that's the way to your heart,
yep,
huh?
Sure is. Under a waterfall, let's do that.
Sold. Note, write that down, people. Write that down. All right. Robin Hood was great. I always liked that one.
Oh,
I watched it again a couple of years ago, and I was surprised how much I still remembered, and yet there was certain parts that I had completely forgotten about.
Totally. So silly.
Great. All right, next up, we're going to do a little this or that.
Okay.
All right, so I've got, it's kind of a quick fire round. I just throw 2 options at you, and you tell me which one you prefer.
Okay.
And as always, I will say you can interpret these in any way you like.
Okay. Perfect.
Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts?
Starbucks.
City or country?
Both.
Come on now. You can't cheat on the second one.
Damn it.
You gotta pick one.
Okay, city younger, country older.
Okay. All right, there you go. Love or money?
Love.
Dita Von Teese or dirty martini?
Dirty.
A dirty martini or a pint of beer?
Man, that is a moody question. I'm going to say dirty martini.
Day or night?
Man, I'm a morning person, but I love my night vibes. Yeah. I'm the worst at this game.
It's like they're both so good.
Yeah, I'll say day, sure.
Harry Potter or Star Wars?
Harry Potter.
Top or bottom?
Top.
Interpretation, whatever you want.
Yeah.
Mountains or ocean?
Ocean.
Classic or neo-burlesque?
Neo.
Peanut butter or jelly?
Peanut butter.
Comedy or tragedy?
Tragedy. Marvel
or DC?
Which one are the X-Men?
X-Men are in Marvel.
I'll pick Marvel.
So clearly, you're a big fan. Sleep or sex?
Sex.
Heels or bare feet?
Bare feet.
And lastly, because of course I got into burlesque over in Paris, that's where my burlesque heart lies, I have to ask, Paris or Vancouver?
That is hard. I just visited Paris for the first time, and I definitely left a piece of my heart there. But I definitely still had to pick Vancouver. I mean...
It's understandable.
West Coast.
Space.
So much space.
Yeah. Much more than in Paris. Paris, there's not so much of that.
Not so much.
Excellent. All right. Well, the stress is off now. All right. We finished the intense part. Before we wrap up a little bit, I would love to hear, I say this to everybody, the internet is a big place, of course, and there's a lot going on in the burlesque world, especially with how international and interconnected everything is. So how do you stay current with the news of burlesque?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I'm online way too much with the nature of my job. But, 21st century burlesque, obviously, Holly May is amazing at not only sort of doing all her own reviews and stuff, but also hiring other people to report back for her. You know, I follow certain people on Facebook, but Twitter to me is also still really relevant. And I sort of watch my favorite people and sort of look into what their politics and opinions are. But I find like for burlesque news, if you need to know anything, you just pop onto Facebook, pop onto someone you admire. What are they talking about? And sort of go from there. I find, as this is such a DIY art form and that we propel so much of our own media, that our opinions are more important than average news sources. No one's reporting, in the Huffington Post anything about burlesque that we don't already know. It might be some opinions and it might be telling us some events that are happening, but I've never really heard anyone that wasn't a full-time performer tell me more insight than someone who doesn't perform burlesque. So,
and I think you're right. I think maybe in other industries it wouldn't be the same, but we are so performer driven or producer driven or whoever it is, we're so internally driven with the news that we created ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not going to like read up on like Burlesque Times, like the, like the Ballet Journal, you don't have, it's not really that. It's like people who are having a voice and writing blogs and like expressing opinions and picking up our art form in our industry and sharing that, I think is where most of our quote news kind of comes from.
So how about videos? Tell us, I'd love to hear about 2 YouTube or Vimeo or whatever videos that you that you would like to share. One maybe of yourself or your troupe or your school, and then one that you just can't get enough of, whether it's burlesque or not.
Oh, right. Well, one of my favorite acts, like I did see it at the Hall of Fame in 2011, was Trixie Little's Jailbreak act. It's not really a jailbreak, but it's like she's a prisoner, and it just like, I don't know, I just love her so much and love her style and like really could watch it like over and over again. She's got some like slick removals, but also just her whole attitude in this act is just awesome. And I go back and watch it often.
That's awesome.
I do, I do have the video of me with my winning act from the Hall of Fame in 2013. It's called Frostbite. It is on YouTube, and
good.
I like it.
I'm excited to watch that now. I was going to ask you actually after you had mentioned it whether you had that or not. So for everybody listening, as always, you can find you'll find all the links 21st Century Burlesque, and well, I guess just Facebook and Twitter. Well, you know how to get there, but you'll find any of the links that we talk about as well for Lola's inspiration, those people that inspired her. And these videos are all going to be on the show notes page for this episode, which is going to be at, as always, burlesquestrippeddown.com/Lola, Lola.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when Lola Vanilla finally comes on my podcast, because I've been talking about it forever, she's just going to get Vanilla instead, because you've already claimed Lola.
Oh,
so.
awesome.
She gets second. So you can check out that over there. Check out these videos as well. And you'll be able to find links to the next question, which is, how can we keep up with you? How can we get in touch with you if we want to know more, Lola?
I'm everywhere on the internet. Yeah. Well, it's funny because, just like how much it's exploded in the last few years is really crazy that people can't even get their names anymore. But I did. I was, I guess, an early-ish adopter. So I have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at Lola Frost. And then also I have a Tumblr, but it's called By the Trail of Glitter and Broken Hearts.
Okay.
That's just where I put like pictures and writing and stuff. You can see more nakedness as opposed to censoredness. Yeah, and I have a blog, which is, it's not under my full performer name, but it's WordPress. So it's thelolafrost.wordpress.com.
Fantastic. Yeah, I've actually checked that out. You have some great articles there. I'm looking forward to reading a little bit more.
Thank you.
So excellent. All right. Well, we'll definitely, I'm sure everybody listening is anxious to check out that video of Frostbite, as well as some other things that you have going on. By the time this goes live, we'll probably have missed the Vancouver Festival, but we'll all mark it down on our calendars for next year, and we'll all have a big Burlesque Stripped Down party there. How about that?
Awesome.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for being on. I'm really glad that we got to kind of get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely, Velvet. It's super rad to talk to you. You've got great energy and so much insight.
Well, thank you. Is there anything else you wanted to share with our audience?
Keep being awesome.
We will all try to do that. Thank you so much.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
And there you have it, Lola Frost, ladies and gentlemen. Isn't she wonderful? Isn't she lovely? Yeah, I don't sing. This is not a thing I do. That's Babette Delabutte, who, by the way, needs to come on this podcast. Babette, if you are listening, get your butt on Skype so we can have a date. So Ms. Lola Frost was a fantastic person to talk to. I'm so glad to have gotten to know her, and I look forward to seeing her very soon. I believe she mentioned she is going to be at BurlyCon this year, so finally I will get to see her in person, up close and personal. So be sure to go check out her website, her all over all the social media interwebs, and give her some love. Tell her that you heard about her here on Burlesque Stripped Down. While you're on the interwebs, go ahead, share this episode. Go to iTunes, all those things I was mentioning earlier. I would love you forever. You can always email me, velvet@burlesquestrippeddown.com. You can also head to burlesquestrippeddown.com, and over on the right-hand side of any of the pages, you can leave me a voicemail. And of course, since you'll be there anyway, checking out the show notes for this episode, which will be at burlesquestrippeddown.com/Lola, Lola. Thank you again so much for listening, everybody. Make sure that you stay cool in this intense summer heat. Stay safe if you've been dealing with any of these tropical storms and craziness lately. For those of you around the world, I know there's been some flooding and everything like that, so make sure that you are taking good care of your family and yourself. And as always, make sure that you stay sexy.